Tonight, bold rescue mission. Diplomats rush to safety out of Sudan and away from danger, including some Canadians. A perilous operation.
We've deployed some forces into theater.
The small window of opportunity.
Pulling citizens out of a war zone is always a challenge.
While thousands of foreign nationals shelter in place.
Rockets, explosions, gunfire right outside of our door.
And Canadians left to fend for themselves.
We barely had any water, and our food supply was running dangerously low.
Waiting for help from Ottawa. Plus, solemn memories of an unspeakable day.
Well, it's emotional. It brings us back to the day.
Marking 5 years since Toronto's deadly van attack.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Good evening. Ottawa today temporarily suspended diplomatic operations in Sudan as the situation, inflamed by a military power struggle, worsens rapidly. It is not safe to walk on the streets of Khartoum with bullets flying. Getting food and water is a challenge. So is getting out of the country. The U.S. spirited its diplomats to safety in a daring late-night operation involving Chinook helicopters like these. Canadians were said to be among those airlifted out. Now, Global Affairs has confirmed Canadian diplomats are out of danger and out of Sudan. But among the many Canadian nationals still in the country, there are concerns about how to survive and stay safe. CTV's Kevin Gallagher reports.
Intense fighting at Khartoum's airport has closed off at least one exit strategy for nearly 1,600 Canadians stuck in Sudan.
The goal would be to get out as soon as we can.
Aza Ahmed is one of them. Her mother suffers from dementia. She flew from Toronto to see her before the violence broke out last week. Now she feels frustrated and abandoned by the federal government.
The Kuwaitis, the Indians, the South Koreans, the French, and some of the Americans were able to evacuate their citizens safely. So I'm not sure why there's such a delay or difficulty getting Canadian citizens out.
Today, the Prime Minister confirmed Canada's diplomats are safe. They've been extracted and are working outside the country. While Canada's embassy in Khartoum is closed, Justin Trudeau says we are also looking at every possible option to support Canadians in Sudan. As the battle between the Sudanese army and RSF fighters escalates, it's not clear what options are left.
It's very scary right now. It's a very scary situation.
A huge anxiety for Salma Gabel-Noor in Toronto. Her father, sister, and brother are all sheltering in different parts of the capital. Her brother recently sent her this video of his home riddled with bullet holes and torn open by a bomb that somehow didn't explode.
They're running out of food right now. There is no fresh water at all. My brother is taking a risk every single day just to go and grab water.
The situation grows more deadly and volatile by the day, while repeated power outages and disrupted internet service threatens to silence international pleas. Canada has a rapid response team in the region, but has already warned civilians with Sudanese airspace closed, Sandy. Rescue efforts look bleak.
Kevin in Ottawa, thank you. An American special ops team flew through Sudanese airspace under cover of darkness to rescue American diplomats and their families, among them some Canadians. It was a dangerous mission, but in the end, not one shot was fired. CTV's Richard Madden reports.
Confirmation tonight, all American diplomats are safely out of its embassy in Khartoum after a dramatic overnight rescue mission involving at least 100 U.S. Special Forces. The Pentagon calling the operation fast and clean, saying 3 Chinook helicopters left a U.S. base in Djibouti through the darkness on a 1,200-kilometer mission, refueling in Ethiopia, then flying low and slow to the embassy, airlifting dozens of diplomats, staff, and their families. Reports say at least 6 Canadians were also on board. The special ops team was on the ground less than an hour before making the long journey back. President Joe Biden authorized the mission Friday. the same day Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin revealed extra troops were being sent in.
We always want to make sure that we're doing prudent planning, which is what we're doing. We've deployed some forces into theater to ensure that we provide as many options as possible.
Biden praising the unmatched skill of our service members, but adding, because of the ongoing violence, we are temporarily suspending operations at the U.S. Embassy in Sudan. Secretary of State Antony Blinken releasing this photo of him monitoring the evacuations in real time. For now, there are no official plans to evacuate roughly 16,000 American nationals trapped in the war-torn country, but the administration says it's exploring options.
Pentagon overnight said that they could maybe think about setting up a safe corridor between Khartoum and Port Sudan, and that presumably using drones would allow the U.S. Navy to take people out by sea.
The next group of evacuees could be American aid workers who are being told to shelter in place.
Those individuals who are there on aid missions, there is actually a UN effort now to get people from Khartoum out over the land corridor.
And top U.S. officials say the mission incurred no injuries or gunshots. President Biden calling the violence unconscionable and is urging an immediate, unconditional ceasefire. Sandy.
Richard, thank you. The U.S. is also deploying a disaster response team for Sudan as several other countries move to evacuate embassy staff from Africa's third largest country. The UK airlifted British diplomats and their families in what Britain's Prime Minister called a complex and rapid operation. And France confirmed a French plane carried roughly 100 people from Khartoum to nearby Djibouti. Germany, Spain, and Italy also made efforts to rescue diplomats. Well, some rather undiplomatic comments from China's ambassador to France have been greeted with international fury. The envoy questioned the sovereignty of former Soviet states, including Ukraine, during an interview. This on a day Russia says it took control of 3 more districts of the besieged city of Bakhmut. And rained down missiles on Kharkiv. Fortunately, no one was injured. 47 bodies have been exhumed in eastern Kenya after a police investigation into a Christian cult that reportedly starved its members to death. Among the victims found buried in graves, children and their parents. Police say the leader of the Good News International Church has been taken into custody while DNA tests are conducted. It has been a peaceful day in Ottawa, with public service workers taking the weekend off. Tomorrow, thousands will return to the picket lines. Ottawa insists negotiations are moving ahead, despite the union claiming just the opposite, as CTV's Bill Fortier reports.
Across Canada, striking federal workers took a second day away from the picket line.
What do we want? When do we want it?
Expected to get back out tomorrow for a 6th day of job action at passport offices and other federal agencies, creating challenges for people who need those services.
I think it's gone long enough as far as I'm concerned.
Certainly we're trying to have the least amount impact on Canadians as possible.
Behind the scenes, negotiations are ongoing.
Mona!
But in the public eye, a verbal brawl over who is dragging their feet.
There have been up and down. There's been kicking and screaming.
Today, Treasury Board President Mona Fortier told CTV's Question Period the government tried to meet yesterday.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
But the union spoke to media instead.
And we were ready, but the decision was for them to wait to do their press conference.
I wouldn't necessarily characterize it that way.
Union officials insist they planned that press conference because the government wasn't responding to their latest offer.
Of course, the Treasury Board found out about it, that it was scheduled for 1:15, and then tried to basically, force us into a meeting at 1 o'clock.
Key issues in the dispute include job security, flexibility to work from home, and wages. Government offering 9% over 3 years. The union asking for 13.5.
I think it's going to be in everybody's best interest if they were to get to the bargaining table.
Former NDP leader Tom Mulcair suggests the union needs to move its goalposts to get a deal done quickly.
So overall, the union's not reading the room very well because there's not a lot of public sentiment on their side.
The union has expressed concern the government could force back-to-work legislation on employees. Today, the Treasury Board president signaled that's unlikely. Sandy.
Okay, Bill, thank you. Now, people living in the low-lying areas of central Canada are keeping an eye on the waterways this weekend as they brace for annual spring flooding. Along the Ottawa River, volunteers are filling and delivering tens of thousands of sandbags to secure properties against the rising waters. It's a scene playing out in Quebec, too, where a flood-prone Montreal borough is banking on lessons learned from the past. CTV's Olivia O'Malley explains.
If they don't open the dam, it won't be too bad.
Every morning, Gianna Valentino and her husband watch the river creep closer and closer to their home.
It's just concerning. You know, we're stressed. We're stressed about it just in case it does come up, because it is coming up slowly.
Despite Sunday's rain, Pierrefonds-Roxborough Mayor Jim Bays says the water level remains stable.
Where we're standing in 2017, we were more than waist deep in water.
The mayor says the borough learned valuable lessons from the devastating floods in 2017. When thousands of people were forced from their homes.
Well, since then, not only did we learn where the water came through and where it crested to flood the different communities, but we also knew the type of measures. We started to figure out what type of measures we needed.
The borough has already completed phase 1 of its flood prevention plan. A temporary dike stretching nearly 2 kilometers has been installed, and sandbags have been distributed to those who may need them. Now, Pierrefonds-Roxborough officials remain on standby.
Standby for us is we have people mobilized on the ground. We're on the ground constantly, not only monitoring on our own what's happening, but also reassuring the residents.
St. Anne de Bellevue crews are also on the ground, pumping water out of the sewers. The province's civil security team isn't bracing for flooding similar to 2017, but realizes anything can happen. While residents in the West learned tough lessons from the past, it also taught them the importance of community.
Everyone helps each other, and everybody's worried at the same time that it'll happen again.
Knowing they can lean on each other if the levels take a turn for the worse. Olivia O'Malley, CTV News, Montreal.
Well, an out-of-bounds adventure at a Rocky Mountain ski area took a turn for the worse this weekend when an avalanche claimed the life of a 21-year-old Alberta man. He and 2 friends were skiing the West Bowl of the Lake Louise ski resort when they triggered the slide. He's the 15th person to die in a Canadian avalanche this season. It's hard to believe it's been half a decade since a van driven down a major Toronto thoroughfare deliberately slammed into innocent people, most of them women. Today, a somber memorial service to remember lives lost and the senseless act that still haunts survivors. CTV's Sean Lethon reports.
It has been 5 years. 5 years since 11 people were killed, 15 more injured. But for those marking this dark day in Toronto, the time seems like a moment ago.
Well, it's emotional. It's this brings us back to the day that it happened.
With a small gathering near where the Yonge Street van attack took place, family of victims, some who were victims themselves, and others who played a part remembered where they were when it happened.
I was about 10 minutes away from the area here, and I think I saw the last ambulance that left the scene.
It was around 1:30 p.m. on April 23, 2018, when a man driving a rented van drove down the sidewalk along Yonge Street in North York. It was later revealed that his cowardly act was aimed at women, which 9 of the dead were. Toronto police taking the driver of the van into custody. He was later found guilty of 10 counts of first-degree murder.
Even 5 years later, I think we're still so very sorry that this tragedy happened to their families, and we will remember them. We are working on a memorial for them.
It was unfathomable then and still shocking now.
Part of the small ceremony also marked the first time in 3 years that this event has been in person. The family of victim Anne-Marie D'Amico has since created a charity raising more than $800,000.
It's more about, we want to continue the legacy. It's something that is now us. Like my sister is us through this foundation.
So when it comes to healing, they say it's hard to tell. Today is about remembering what seemed impossible and what seemed only a short time ago.
Toronto's former police chief saying that this was a loss of innocence for the city, and the city saying that they're going to make a more permanent memorial here along Yonge Street where the attack happened. Sean Lethong, CTV News, Toronto.
Coming up after the break, a slumping retailer fizzles out, plus a creative new concept.
We'll be able to be picked from the vine.
Fresh from the greenhouse to the grocery store in 24 hours. After years of dismal sales and a failed last-minute turnaround plan, Bed Bath & Beyond officially filed for bankruptcy today. The last of its stores in Canada and the U.S. will be shuttered by the end of June. The company was founded in 1971 and grew to become one of the original big box retailers. An original idea from Manitoba's agricultural sector has taken root. It involves growing vegetables indoors in greenhouses during the coldest months of the year and rolling them out fresh from the vine. CTV's Manitoba Bureau Chief Jill Makashon reports.
In the middle of a sudden spring snowstorm, the finishing touches in what will be Manitoba's largest vegetable greenhouse. Owned and operated by Vermilion growers, this facility will produce roughly 3.5 million kilos of vine-ripened tomatoes this year.
First phase will give us 10 acres of growing area, so we have 10 acres under glass, which is about 44,000 square meters of growing area.
This region was actually chosen because of the weather. The western Manitoba city of Dauphin is known for its sunshine, but all this precipitation also helps, providing up to 50% of the water here.
So rain, snow that melts over the course of the year, all of that precipitation we actually capture in the roof system here and then feed it back to our irrigation tanks, where we hold that and then we can use that for watering the plants.
Operational by summer, the greenhouse will offer up to 30 new jobs for the region in growing, packing, and distribution, moving fresh tomatoes from the greenhouse to the grocery store.
We'll be able to be picked from the vine and be in a store in probably 24 hours.
Today, about half the vegetables grown in Canada are produced indoors. The impacts of climate change and the increased unreliability of the import market is driving the need for food sustainability in Canada. A $2.7 billion industry, Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia are the biggest commercial greenhouse producers. The prairies have a small 11% share in the market now.
I think it's going to ramp up incredibly quickly, so that, one of the things that a lot of the growers are trying to do now is to expand to other types of vegetable crops.
Tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers are the most popular vegetables, but increasingly lettuce and other leafy greens are also moving to commercial production. The drawback for all the operations, the cost of electricity and heating, which is factored into pricing. But with more greenhouses coming online, expect this market to grow increasingly competitive and versatile in the years to come. Jill Makashon, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Still ahead, putting her own spin on music that rocks. An Inuk singer is giving a cultural twist to popular rock songs in her own way, in her own language. Her name is Alyssa P., and her musical renditions are being praised far and wide. In tonight's Indigenous Circle, CTV's Donna Sound introduces us to this unique artist.
To have your face on a massive billboard in downtown Toronto is a big deal. For Alyssa P., an Inuk singer-songwriter working with Spotify to expand Indigenous music, this is huge.
It's really more about being seen as an Indigenous woman, as a proud, happy Indigenous woman. I think it's also something that will inspire others.
Alyssa P. is from a fly-in community in Nunavik, Quebec, and sings in Inuktitut, her mother tongue. She got a lot of attention for a cover of Blondie's Heart of Glass in Inuktitut, and was even praised by Blondie's Debbie Harry herself. Posting on social media, "This is absolutely stunning. Well done."
I was floating. For a week, I was pretty much floating.
Ilisapia is working on a new album, reworking 10 classic songs, including ones by Cyndi Lauper, Queen, and Metallica.
I felt like I was opening a closet full of memories, and everything became very, very emotional. And I think there's something that opened up in my head and my heart.
The power of music with nothing lost in translation. Donna Sound, CTV News, Toronto.
Well, in the UK, the fourth in line to the throne turned 5 today. And for his birthday, his parents released 2 new portraits of their youngest son. Prince Louis is as precocious as ever. After the break, keeping secrets from the boss. A big truck and a little bit of trust. The workers are behind the wheel on this one. We leave you tonight with a story about an 18-wheeler that's become a singular passion for a BC man. He happens to be the boss, but now his staff is taking charge. CTV's Gord Kurbis explains.
It's a big rig that's at the center of a big wish.
They're just super powerful, super cool. They don't make this model anymore. Obviously, they discontinued it in '91.
Richard Mayer owned this 1987 rig at one point, but as a Mack truck dealer, sold it to his best customer, who restored it and now treats it as his baby.
He was basically no expense spared. I want this as a show truck. He won't even drive it in the rain. But it is a working truck.
It's owned by Coastal Trucking in Ladysmith, a company that owns more than 50 Macks. The company's employees want the public's help with this one, entered into a contest to be one of 12 rigs featured in next year's Mack calendar.
We just want everybody to vote. I mean, it's North American wide, and we're really trying to get in the top 12. Currently, we're 13th, but we're getting close.
The company's owner purchased and restored this truck for his 50th birthday.
It is his special truck. He is the only one that drives it. He's the one that polishes it. He's the one that keeps it in pristine condition.
The custom restoration that includes a train horn took more than 8 months during COVID, at an expense more than it would cost for a new rig.
He kept my guys employed when things slowed down, and I'm ever grateful for that.
The company's employees are trying to pull off this calendar project without the owner's knowledge. He's on holidays until the middle of next week. They're hoping that when he returns, they'll be high up in the rankings. Doing it, they say, because of everything that he does for the community of Ladysmith.
He does so much behind the scenes. He donates so much to all the organizations.
And helps keep the community safe as a volunteer firefighter for more than 30 years.
Great success story of a local guy out of Ladysmith who just had the dream and the will to succeed.
And now they're dreaming of a calendar.
Now they're dreaming of a calendar. Yeah.
The contest closes to voting on April 30th. Gord Kurbis, CTV News, Ladysmith.
That's our newscast for this Sunday. Thank you for sharing your weekend with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Omar is here tomorrow. Have a good night from all of us here at CTV National News. Until next time.